hammer strikes wood, the sound echoes through a quiet town. With each blow, a challenge is sent across Europe. This is not just a protest, this is the beginning of a revolution, the Protestant Reformation. In the early 1500s, the Catholic Church stood at the center of European life. Its influence shaped politics, culture, and belief. Cathedrals towered over cities, their stained glass glowing with color. Priests spoke in Latin, a language most people did not understand. For many, faith was guided by tradition, ritual, and authority. But beneath the surface, tension was building. One of the biggest issues was the sale of indulgences. These were payments made to the church in exchange for forgiveness of sins. Imagine a preacher standing before a crowd, holding out a small piece of paper, promising salvation for a price. To many, it felt wrong. Enter Martin Luther. A German monk and scholar, Luther believed that salvation could not be bought. He argued that faith alone, not money, not rituals, was the path to heaven. In 1517, he took a bold step. He wrote a list of criticisms known as the 95 Theses, and according to tradition, nailed them to the door of a church in Wittenberg. The impact was immediate. Thanks to the printing press, Luther's ideas spread like wildfire. Pamphlets were printed and passed from hand to hand. Words once locked inside church walls now traveled across towns and borders. People began to question. They began to think for themselves. The church responded with force. Luther was called to defend his beliefs. He refused to back down. "Here I stand," he is said to have declared, choosing conviction over safety. Soon, Europe was divided. Kings and princes saw opportunity. Some supported Luther, breaking away from the Catholic Church and gaining power for themselves. New branches of Christianity formed, Protestant churches that rejected papal authority. But this change came at a cost. Religious conflicts spread across Europe. Wars erupted. Neighbors turned against neighbors. The unity that had defined Europe for centuries began to fracture. Yet, from this chaos came transformation. The Reformation led to greater access to education as people sought to read religious texts for themselves. It weakened the absolute power of the church and encouraged new ways of thinking about authority, belief, and individual responsibility. The Protestant Reformation was not just a religious movement. It was a turning point, a moment when ideas challenged power, when words sparked change, and when one man's act of defiance reshaped an entire continent. This is the story of the Reformation, a movement that began with a hammer and ended with a new world taking shape.